Hey, welcome everyone to DevOps Days Amsterdam. Very warm Amsterdam, that is. It's September 15th and it's 31 degrees in Amsterdam, and I'm dying also because I had to turn off my fan because it makes a lot of noise. Anyways, we got this. I hope you have your food ready. The mandatory pizza, of course, because it's a meetup, right? And your drinks. Don't forget, stay hydrated. I have my massive glass of water. Mm, so let's get this party started. Hi, I'm Raita van Rijswijk. Not your usual suspect, Floor. Flora is otherwise engaged, and she's my partner in crime, so I thought just fill in for her. So again, I'm Raita van Rijswijk. I work at XP as an engineering manager. Started yesterday. But I'm not doing this alone, of course. We have Daniel Paulus at the tech. He'll be the technical production guy for today. He is a consultant at Full Stack. So this meetup has a code of conduct. You can find the code of conduct on our website, devopsdays.org/conduct. So the program of today, we have two very inspiring talks. One is about meetings and the other one is about security. After the talks, we will give you an opportunity for a 10-minute Q&A. You can ask your questions right here at the chat. And after the first talk, we have like a 20-minute break. So you can get your refreshments, bathroom break. And then we'll continue with our second talk. And we'll end this meetup around 20:30-ish. So let's start with our first speaker, Els. Els, are you there?
I am there.
Hey,
Hello.
Els. Welcome.
Good evening.
So nice to meet you virtually. So everyone, this is Els van Vessem. Els will talk about meetings, tips, tricks, improvements. I am like looking so forward. I'm so excited. So they've recently started the job as a BI specialist in Rotterdam, and they have a secret mission, nudging their new coworkers in a DevOps direction. So curious, so excited. So without any further ado, please, Els, take it away.
Yes. I'll see if I can start my... yes. Very fun to have the whole Droste effect.
Yes.
Also the English term, I suppose. So I'm going to talk to you about meetings today. And that's because I really love meetings. And I know I'm a bit of a rare breed there because most of the people I've worked with in the past really, really hated them. So I hope that at the end of my talk, you'll love meetings a bit as well, or at least have some ideas to improve the meetings in your life and in your work. And that I'll give you some tips and tricks. As was just mentioned, I just started as a BI specialist at a hospital in Rotterdam at the Icasia ziekenhuis. I'm a BI specialist there, but before I started there, I was a project lead and also a BI specialist at a consulting and a contracting firm. So I did many projects at many different organizations, many different companies. And that meant I had a shit ton of meetings, to be quite honest. And I got into thinking about meetings, how to do meetings, how to improve meetings, because I had to set up my own team. That also is, by the way, what got me into the whole DevOps thing, because I was going to start an operations team and we were gonna operate the stuff that our coworkers would have devved. And I wanted to do this right. And the whole atmosphere of automation and also all the kindness and inclusivity that was shown by the community, that was shown in the book Accelerate by Nicole Forsgren that you've, of course, all read and work by. Uh, that is how I really got into DevOps. That's also what informed how I did meetings at that job. But my big love of meetings even started before that, because I was a part of a student union. This is why I'm at that picture like that. I can't point at the screen. That's really hard in this format because I don't even know where I am on your screen. But as you can see here, this is me about 10, 12 years ago speaking at a demonstration because I was part of a student union and did lots of activism. And being in a union, that meant we had general assemblies, algemene ledenvergaderingen. They were about once every 2 months, and they were very huge, structured meetings. So one of the things that's always very important in every meeting is an agenda. And the agenda basically says all the stuff you will talk about in a meeting. One of the things that is extra important to pay extra attention to if you are the person who organizes the meeting is to make sure you make some room for announcements. And those announcements, you should take into account that those are things that might have impact on that meeting. So, for example, I have to leave my phone on because there's a family emergency going on. Or I have to leave a bit earlier because I want to go to a different meeting, or I have a DevOps presentation I had to do. This is why I left work earlier today. Completely unrelated, there will be pictures of my kitties in this presentation. This is the one you see here is Kiara, and you will see pictures of Kovu as well. So if you don't like what I'm saying, please look at my kitties. They're very cute. So you have the agenda in your meeting, which is one of the important things, and the agenda makes sure that you can prepare for your meeting, both as the person who organizes the meeting, but also the people who are there. And I would really recommend if you attend a meeting and there's no agenda, and even if there's an agenda and there's certain topics on there that might require preparation, please email the organizer or tell them in person or Zoom them or Slack them, doesn't really matter, to send you the materials so you can prepare. Because a meeting will go way smoother, way nicer if everyone is able to prepare beforehand. That's also a thing we did in those general assemblies, which usually had about 10 to 15 people in attendance. Those meetings would usually take hours because we had many things to go through. We always got the pieces that we had to read, the things that we had to decide on. We got those papers, those documents about 1 or 2 weeks in advance. That meant that if you were a certain work group or you were very you had a very strong opinion on a topic, you could prepare your response and even put it in writing, and very often even send it to the organizers, the board of the union again, so they could send that already to the other people who would attend. So you could even be prepared on the preparation of others. If stuff is done like that, things in the meeting will go way smoother and way quicker, and you will have to spend less time on the meetings. Because time is always a bit of an issue. I think many of you will think or know people who think that meetings take up too much of your time, and if they're there, they take too long. And I also recently saw a sort of comic with bar charts saying that if you're a very good coder, if first at the beginning when you're a junior, you'll have a whole bar chart full time of coding, and then the amount of meetings you'll have will grow. Which I do also see is sort of true, that many people who are good at their jobs will get more more management roles, which results in more meetings. But there are a few things that you should take into account according to with the time. When you make an agenda, when you prepare your meeting, do take into account all the time, the amount of time all the pieces will cost. How long will a discussion be? How long will it take someone to explain a certain thing? Don't put too many things in your meeting, because we all know it's very easy to run out of time. And you do want to time box. You do want to make sure that you end at the time you've told people it will end. Be very strict about that timekeeping, and that's something you can also do as a participant. Just mention to, like, hey, we've I only have an hour today, and we've been talking about this topic for 30 minutes. Maybe we should switch. uh, do take the agency. You have yourself as a participant in a meeting. Take the agency to control the flow of time. um, Also, one of the things is be on time. This is something that is especially important with certain kind of meetings in which there are several building blocks that build upon each other. I might say a bit more about that in our, because this is the 101, in the 201. Certain things build on each other, and that means that if you miss the first part, you won't be able to participate in the most effective way in the other parts of the meeting. Or in the beginning, stuff is explained that creates a safe space, something I will go into later. And if you come in later, that'll disrupt that feeling of safety that might be needed for that meeting. Um, a last thing I want to tell you about time is, do take into account the working hours. If you have a meeting and you have 10 people in the meeting and one person talks for 10 minutes, it's 100 working minutes. It's about an hour and a half of human time. Um, and that means that if you have more people in the meeting, the longer you talk, it will get exponentially, well, not exponentially, it is way, way, way longer in working hours. So do take that into consideration, so to not repeat yourself or repeat your coworkers if someone else made the amazing point you wanted to make as well. We're now, this is the 101. We all know that it's important to have an agenda, that you have to prepare your meetings, that it's important to be on time and take time into account. Then, one of the other very important things is your goal. The goal of Kovu is to lay on the floor and be very cute and eat food. He's very food oriented. So, we've all been in meetings that should have been an email. I think one of the most important things that you can do to improve your meetings is to consider what is the goal of that meeting. And is a meeting the right means to get to that goal? If you just want to inform your coworkers, maybe do send an email, or maybe make a video, or do something else to make sure your points get across. Meetings are very good to share information, to have a discussion, to create a consensus, or some ways a teaching moment, or to get to know your coworkers. Use a meeting as a sort of almost team building activity. Besides the goals of the specific agenda points you can have on your meeting, you can also have personal goals, and you can have those as a normal participant as well. Maybe you want to learn to speak in public. Having your regular team meetings can be a great way to practice this. Maybe you want to practice your clearer communication. And maybe you want to observe people in a social environment. Meetings are amazing to look around, to see who's talking, who's not talking, to look at body language, to really get a feel of how a group of people functions as a group. And maybe you can even use that to make the world a bit of a better place, to make sure that that coworker that's always very silent, but that you know has probably a great point to make, that they get heard as well, especially if you're one of the more extroverted people. Then, with goals, there's this thing. What I just mentioned is you should pick the right means to get to a goal. And very often in meetings, we have this very classic, someone talks, then we have a discussion, then we maybe, hopefully, make a decision, and then it's done. It's a lot of talking, and it's a lot of big group thing, or one person talks, other people receive. There's other things you can do as well that might fit better if you want to get to your goal. Maybe it might be more important to if you want to have a brainstorm, it's usually very advised to first have people write down their ideas individually. Take like a few minutes and write down their ideas. Then discuss those ideas in small groups, groups of 2 or 3. This is especially useful if you want to have a meeting with a bigger team, if you want to have a quarterly or something that will generate ideas or plans. Then, like I said, first individually, then in small groups, then have those small groups present their ideas to the big group. Use props, use all the whiteboards and post-it notes you can. I have a severe love of post-it notes. And I really miss that all the time I had to work from home that we couldn't use a huge whiteboard. I am now working in an office again twice a week, and I really love the fact I can put stuff on walls again. One other thing you can do if you want to use a different format and a different strategy for your meetings is look at group intervision. I'm not sure if that's the correct English word. We could call it intervisie, peer-to-peer support. I've done this with my fellow project leads at my former job. We would have a sort of structured interview. Someone would have an issue, usually related to the project they were leading, like how do I keep control of my team and how do I make sure that I know what is happening? Or I had a certain problem. I had a fight with with the client we're working with because they found we spent too much time. It's usually about time again, isn't it? In that kind of intervision interview, we would usually have the person describe their problem. Then we would have a phase in which we were only allowed to ask factual information to get a complete picture. Then we would take some time to generate ideas by ourselves, then share them with the group, and then only the person who had the problem was allowed to respond. Having very structured interviews like that are a great way to change up the meeting, to give it a bit of a different pace, and to give it a bit of a different flavor and get possibly better results, better meet your goals. Then, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is you should have, if you really want to improve your meeting game, get a facilitator. And I especially don't say chair, I say a facilitator, because it's the person that facilitates the whole going on. They will keep track of the agenda, keep track of the time that I just mentioned was very important. We'll make sure that if you use different strategies, different ways of working, that those will be explained and that the rules will be followed. And they will also make sure that everyone has a voice and that they're heard. Very often, it's best if the person who's the facilitator is not doesn't have the job to mention on-topic things. So very often, don't make the manager the facilitator. They might not always like that because managers like to talk and like to be in control, but maybe make it a rotating role. Like I said, the facilitator is in some sense the keeper of the space. And I think it's very important, even if we just talk about tech in our meetings, that we create a safe space. Tech can be very harsh, can be a harsh environment, and I think it's very important to foster a place where everyone can give their ideas and their opinions, and that it's a non-judgmental space, that it's a non-hierarchical space. Of course, we sometimes have hierarchy in works because we have managers and bosses and etc. But I think in most meetings, it's more important that we can all share our ideas because we can all learn from one another. Also, that there's no one true way to fix stuff. And lastly, that you can bring yourself to work. The thing of a safe space is that sometimes it's a very ungraspable concept. How do you create an environment that's safe for everyone? There's no one way of doing that. And it also depends on who's in your team and how does everyone feel and what is the baseline of emotions. One thing of fostering a safe space, one thing I've done very successfully in my old team, where I was just a facilitator, by the way, I didn't manage that team. I was just a person who liked organizing things like this, and other people can make the points that are important to me as well. But one of the things I did, because we were a group of dudes, I was the only non-dude, and talking about emotions was not our thing, but we did a check-in. like every beginning of every monthly retrospective we started with saying how we felt. I had usually had a page out with all kinds of emotion words, because it can be hard to just go a bit further than I am happy, or I am sad, or I am angry. That worked remarkably well. You can do a good news round. I think that's something that's relatively common, also to start the meeting with a sort of good space to say something positive. You can have an introduction round, which can be especially good if you have a group that's new. Please don't do like, this is my name, I'm this age, and I came from here, or I work for that company. Do something more creative. Let people tell what's their favorite mode of transport. Let them show a picture of their cat. That always works. The most important thing here is that you have everyone speak. Everyone in the room, everyone that's part of the meeting. Do make sure they can also opt out, but have them say that they opt out, or that they don't want to join in this. People are always allowed to not say things, but it is important in that first part that they say they don't want to say things. One of the other important things is setting rules. The first time you do this, it might feel a bit awkward, because many of those rules are things that are very implicit. Making them explicit will make the space feel safer, will make sure that everyone knows that these are the rules and that they will be enforced by the facilitator. For example, that we have breaks every hour, like we had in the beginning, like the code of conduct that was mentioned. We also had that in the beginning of this meetup, that we will stop on time. Maybe it's important to phrase that we will listen to one another, and that everyone will always get a turn. Maybe if it's a big meeting, that you raise your hand before you speak. In some cases, if it's a personal thing that's going to be discussed, that everything will be discussed will stay in the walls of this virtual room. Things like that are very important to state. Maybe it's even a good idea to create those rules with your team. Might be a very good thing to do in retrospective, or in some other team building like activity. Because I think the most important thing of all is kindness and compassion. And all the things I just mentioned show the kindness and compassion you can have for your fellow humans and your fellow coworkers, or the other people you meet with, by creating that safe space, by using certain formats and strategies that make sure that not only the person who always yells the loudest gets heard most, by having a facilitator that makes sure that everyone gets heard and that makes sure that the rules are followed, by picking the right means to get to your goal, by being on time and being conscious of that things cost time and that time is a valuable resource for everyone, to prepare your meeting and make sure that people can be prepared, and to have a good agenda. This was all I wanted to tell you about meetings. If you want to know more, these two books I can really recommend. Meeting Design for Managers, Makers, and Everyone really shows you how to craft a meeting and to take time to create a meeting. Then we have the Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great. It's also useful for non-retrospectives, and it's also useful if you don't do Agile. It also talks a lot about how to be a good facilitator. So this was my talk. It's very weird to say this without having any feedback. And let's see, I can close the presentation without everything crashing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Els. I have the Agile Retrospective book as well. I love it. It's amazing.
Can someone please close my screen?
It's gone. Thank you. I learned a lot.
Cool.
You touched upon so many points, and so I have a few questions for you. Basically, it's very curious myself. So the meetings, for instance, that I organize are for the teams internally, and often there's this. Well, when you organize a meeting, you're also the facilitator. That can sometimes be hard, right? I mean, what if you're not an outspoken person? You're not like, you don't have a loud voice, but you want to organize this meeting because you're like, for instance, the lead of this particular project, or it can be hard, right? So you're not a scrum master, you're not a facilitator, but it is important that you need to run this meeting. Do you have like, any tips for someone who is not like a natural facilitator but needs to organize this meeting?
I think make sure what you want, what you need, make sure there's a good agenda. I think that's really the first point. And make sure time is being kept and that you come up with some sort of rule or regulation of how you give people their turn. And maybe if you know, because you usually know in that case the people you will meet with, have some preparing talks with people. Like if you know that this one person will always completely go off on their own sidetrack, maybe talk to them in advance and ask them like, hey, I've noticed that you sometimes do this. I'm gonna facilitate this meeting, and will you please help me maybe to make sure everyone gets a voice? Ask people for help is a very important thing there, I think.
Yeah, I
And
totally.
having pre-talks might be is something that can be very useful as well, especially if stuff is more tough or if it's the first time you do things.
Yeah. Also, a tough one is that when other people in the room tend to hijack the goals, even though it's like in the agenda, it's right there, and they kind of like they take the goal, they hijack it,
Yeah.
and they go way off. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's not like that. What? Wait.
Well, you can, with teams and such, you can kick them out. No, that's not really a good solution. Or mute them. No, what I try to do, because I've had people in my team as well who would go on and on and on about their own point.
Right.
I am very extroverted, so for me that might have been easier, but I tended to shut them down, be like, hey, you've made this point, we've heard this before, we're now going to talk back about X.
Yeah.
That's what I tended to do, but I can be I'm very easy in talking over people, or that's something I will do if I facilitate a meeting. I think in that case, again, you have to be clear and firm with people. You have to set the boundaries, and especially the first time that happens, it might feel a bit harsh. Because people are often also not used to the fact that a meeting might be run a bit more strict than they're used to, which I'm talking in a circle, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I think very often meetings are just done and it's expected that everyone knows how to behave, but people don't. And setting these stricter boundaries on, we will only talk about 15 minutes and we will really focus on point X. That can be hard. What you can also do is say, hey, we will discuss it at another time. Or we'll have what is VVTTK in English?
Wat verder te tafel komt. Whatever
Yeah.
comes to the table. That's
There's
literally
probably a proper English term for this, but you usually have a point in the end where if there's any topics left over, we can discuss them at that point. And I think that actually might be the best idea if you have the people who pick their own topic. Be like, hey, let's discuss this later. We're now going to talk about.
Yes, just take it out of the particular meeting.
Yes, and move it.
So else we have a question from the community. Mick asks, did you ever try running a meeting as open space?
I have participated in open spaces and I've also led meetings there, or in some kind of more unconference, which is very like the open spaces is the cousin of unconferences, I think. So I have done that. What exactly is your question?
Well, that's the question. Did you
have.
Ever? Okay. Cool.
It's a concept I really, really love. And I don't think it's much different. It's only a bit less structured, but I think the fact that people are allowed to walk away when they don't feel like it's beneficial to them anymore really still creates that sense of urgency and also makes the changing of topics very natural.
Okay. So the creating the safe place and the rules.
Yes.
I suppose that actually implies for the teams, solely for the teams you're probably working in. So you have like the team agreements, right? So what if you have to organize a meeting for a group of people that's outside your team, because
Yeah.
well, there are quite a lot of horror stories basically that just like so there's one from Floor. Basically, she has like a horror story. She was
Oh.
invited by her manager, like I'm gonna do this for, I'm gonna read your horror story now. That this meeting subject was pretty generic, like review blah. And she didn't know that once she went into the meeting, like everyone, all the managers and the supervisors and the blah blah, the super supervisors
Mm.
were there, and they were all just waiting for this amazing presentations with slides and all. Well,
Oh.
Fleur, of course, amazing as she is, she totally rocked it. But
Of course she did.
oh my god, that's like your worst nightmare. You can be. So what do you do basically if there's no, you have to organize a meeting for a group of people you do not know and you don't know what to expect. And if you're not just as amazing like as Flora, because she can totally rock this, if you're kind of like, okay, I know this is my expectation, and they're all there.
Yeah.
What would
I would,
you do?
if I would have been put in that situation, I think I would have vocalized my discomfort. Like, oh, I'm not aware that you expected me to come out with all the PowerPoints and stuff. So we can only do X. That's, I think, what I would do. Um, and also in those cases, you're asked for a reason. But I really think the fault is at the organizer there, because they should have been made sure that Floor or anyone else would have been able to prepare. And the fact that people had certain expectations also goes with that they weren't prepared in the right way, because they were expecting something, so they were prepared for a certain thing. And I really think the organizers dropped the ball there.
Yeah.
And then you can only improvise and show people cat pictures,
Yes, yes, for
which
sure.
is tough. And Flora is amazing, so I really trust that she was very able to do so very, very well. But that's a tough spot to be in. And I think saying, okay, this is tough for me, this is hard for me, I wasn't expecting so many people, or um, I thought this was going to be something informal, so this is what I prepared. I think vocalizing your discomfort and your fear maybe um, might really help.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Be as honest and transparent as
Yeah.
you can. Yes, totally agree.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Els. This has been very inspiring, and I got quite a lot of tips. So I'm gonna set some meetings to work on team agreements.
Cool, cool.
Thank you
Well,
very much for your time, and I hope you will stick around a bit. We have another amazing talk coming up about security in 20 minutes.
hmm.
So yeah, we will be back soon.
Okay. Bye bye.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So I hope you got your refreshments ready and you're all set for our second talk. Our second speaker has a pretty impressive track record. She is a Microsoft Regional Director and MVP, and she's founder of Secure and Secure Academy. Paula will talk about possible weaknesses in your IT security system. Hi, Paula. Nice to meet you.
Hi, absolutely nice to meet you. And I hope, well, first of all, everybody is enjoying their evening, and thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, well, take it away. The floor is yours. I've got
Absolutely. Thank Mhm.
my notebook and my.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, we got it. I hope everybody is sitting comfortably because today we are actually discussing the think and act like a hacker to protect your company's assets. So today's presentation is full of demos. Let me actually share it with you, and we're gonna make it full screen mode, and then we have it. So yeah, absolutely a pleasure to be a part of your evening. As you could see, my name is Paula Januszkiewicz, and what I'm doing for a living is basically penetration testing. But I'm also, as you guys mentioned, a Microsoft Regional Director, but I do not work for Microsoft. So that is also quite an interesting fact because, yeah, I'm engaged in community, delivering various presentations, but my passion, my work is basically related to cybersecurity. Now, the company Secure I have established literally 12 years ago, and we are placed right now in 4 locations. One is Poland, another one is New York, another one is Dubai, and another one is Switzerland. I'm actually just back from Switzerland, so it's a fantastic weather. I hope you guys have the same thing. Possibly it's the last nice weekend of September, but anyway, here we go. And I think I have to mention that cybersecurity has been always there. I also have access to the source code of Windows, but not really to 100%, but to like 99%. And that's something that is very, very useful for me to do research. But there is this big thing regarding the eventually reverse engineering of plenty of things that I still need to do, and that is something that is always quite challenging. So that's what we're going to be talking about, also from the data protection API perspective, where I would like to show you basically how we are able to get access to a certain data in order to move forward. So like what has evolved in like following years, and I think I have to mention that before we move forward, is that when we've got the perspective on the infrastructure, and I don't know what's your perspective, but my perspective is that approximately, let's say 10, 12 years ago, maybe more like 12, we were focusing on various aspects of security for the network, things like firewall, antivirus, and so on. And now, when we talk about that, it sounds absolutely easy. So, this is like an obvious thing to have. While right now, when we talk security, we talk about the anti exploitation, we talk about the unknown code execution prevention, we talk about different ways of how we're able to impact or, in general, execute vulnerabilities. So, cybersecurity has become more complex, and we all know that. But that also shows one perspective that I would like to share with you, that eventually, when we are thinking about thinking like a hacker, then this perspective, it it doesn't really change, and that's the thing. So you always have to run the code on someone's computer. So the way of executing the code, a way of getting access to the organization's infrastructure, that didn't change that much. Of course, we can have more focus on phishing, and we could design phishing that's going to be more trustworthy, so that the user is going to fall for it. But at the same time, that is something that we have, yeah, as a challenge. But the ways of how we are defending ourselves or protecting ourselves, they didn't change much. It's just that that is more popular, and that's what I want to tell you, that at the end, this thinking like a hacker, it is a knowledge worth to have, because, for example, the way I've been doing pen testing, they slightly changed. Like if you compare of what I've been doing like in the past and the what I'm doing right now, that type of knowledge, it stays, and you always can get access to the infrastructure in a certain way. The identity always can be stolen in a certain way, whether you are on premise or in the cloud. That is kind of the same way at the end. Yeah. So at the end, that's quite an interesting perspective. Okay, so let's move forward. We've got three aspects to cover: awareness, behavior, and culture, and a little bit of theory at the very beginning of the presentation, but then we are actually getting into demos. So here you guys can see like three aspects, and basically awareness, what does it mean? So in security, it means that we are covering all the aspects of it. For example, awareness is also social engineering, and within our team, I'm actually one of the people doing social engineering tests, and there are plenty of stories that I'm always sharing that are related, for example, with social engineering. Like you pretty much pretend to be someone and then you manage to get access to the certain company. Like I was one day with like one guy in the elevator, and I wanted him to open a door for me. So eventually I started this kind of like little, strange conversation with him, like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And he replied, "Hi, I'm fine, and how are you?" And I said, for example, "It's nice to see you again." And this guy was not really like, he hasn't really seen me before, so he was like, "Oh, nice to see you again too." So my next comment over here was, "You know what? You smell very well." And this guy was like, "Okay, like, do you think so?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally. That's what it is." And he was like so happy that like all his radars went down, if they were even there. And then eventually he came out of the elevator first, and he did it, and then he opened the door and he said, "Ladies first." Now it sounds maybe awful, and I will totally agree with you. Like, how could we overuse someone's trust, and how could we play in this game and so on? But the funny fact is that whoever is supposed to do it, this person won't care. And at the end, that is the very realistic situation that could happen within company. And the next stage, that when I was there, I was basically within the company, playing around different tools and so on, trying to copy data. So that was basically my thing over there. But anyway, so you got the concept, yes, of what we are talking about. So long story short, we've got some statistics, and when we look at these statistics, then funny part is that we've got over here that 87% of people or companies that were breached, they did not have security policy in place. And that was quite a challenging, that's quite a challenging fact, because it means that users were reacting in a certain way to actually to the attack, and therefore these attacks were positive. Yeah. At the end, whenever we think about some other aspects here, I think it would be nice to give it a little bit of a summary. That awareness of technically comes with experience, and we've got the situation that basically when we are able to recognize the threat, then we are able to at the end react to it. And then the next part is that behavior comes with awareness, and that means that because we are aware of what can happen, then we act. And then the next part is that culture comes with understanding. That means that in our organization we have a certain cybersecurity culture that we follow, and then users are, for example, locking their desktops every single time they stand up. For that example with this guy in the elevator that I'm explaining here, is that the next stage of this attack was actually to go to the traders floor, and the next stage was to at that a certain moment to actually run code, plug in the pen drive, copy data, and so on. So this was basically my thing over there. Now, interesting situation was that eventually we were able to get into this company, and nobody really paid attention to it. Yes, so I could, for example, stick in a pen drive, I could run some code. Nobody was asking me why am I sitting at someone's desk and so on. So that was quite a bit a challenge over here. Now, interesting next situation that we got is that I would like to present to you actually different aspects that are important from the think and act like a hacker perspective. And the next part will be to get into demonstration to see why these actually three things, so behavior, eventually awareness, so awareness, behavior, and culture, are the important ones. Yeah, so here we go. Now, the first kind of like aspect that is worth having a look at, it's related with, and here we go, the 7 security issues that should not happen in 2020. So the first aspect over here, it's related with, as we call it, pathetic passwords. And that might sound quite funny because we all know that passwords are challenging and so on, and we are trying to be password less right now. But at the same time, what we are talking about over here, it's the password reuse. So every single moment where you actually um, share the password with someone else. And what does it mean to share actually password with someone else? It means that basically you are putting it somewhere in LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on, and any other portal has the same password. So long story short, if for example passwords leak, like it was for example in LinkedIn in 2014, then there is a big risk of that password to be reused, or at least when someone gets the logic out of that, we might have like the first part the same for like every single password, and then it's changing, for example, because we are adding Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on at the end of the password. Another part over here that was interesting was that I was doing the pen test not really long time ago for oil and gas company, and there were like 6,000 users, and I did the password spray. They had no multi-factor authentication, and 29 users, they actually had a password with the company name in 2020. Yeah, so I mean, it's enough to have one, right? Because then you were able to move forward with some other aspects of of the attack. It's no longer phishing, and basically you are able to send data to your pal, and then there is a bigger probability that someone's gonna actually open it. Yeah. So here we go. Now, what I'd like to share with you, it's a situation that basically I totally like to share because it's a problem that most of the organizations actually have, and that is related with passwords for the configuration of the services, and also in general password in the configuration of the operating system. So that's going to be the flow. And let me show you what are we talking about over here. So we've got a machine, and one of the things that we're going to run, it's of course services. I just log on to it. Yes, so here we go. So we've got a services, and then we've got a Pola service. And then over here, as you can see, I've got a service account configured. So that's the Freddy Krueger. And we've got basically a certain password for the service. Yes, so this is easy to actually extract, because in order to be able to do it, we need to know how system secrets work. And system secrets means LSA secrets, and it means that you have to be local system to be able to open it, or at least to have access to the system keys. Yeah. So let's give it a try. So how are we gonna extract that password? Well, first of all, we're gonna fail, if you don't mind, because in here we're gonna get into tools, and we're gonna CQ secrets dumper, and then we're gonna do PJ service like this. And then, well, not the PJ service, but service, sorry. So service, PJ service, here we go. Yep, and then you're gonna see that we've got consider running this tool from the system account. Yeah, so this is basically our Teams tool. And long story short, in order to run it, you have to elevate yourself. So you can either run our tool CQ elevate, or you can run psexec with the option sid cmd.exe like this. And then we can see that we are local system. And then if we get into tools like this, then we can run CQ secrets dumper service PJ service. Yeah, that's the one. So we are able to see the password is there. And normally in registry, it's not stored in the clear text, but we are able to extract it in a clear text if we have access to the local system keys. And there are so many things like this. For example, ASP.NET Core uses a data protection API NG. For this, or eventually some system settings, then you are able to extract them everything I would like to show you this data for the DP API that's going to come later. But right now, any like system configuration that relies on the system in general itself, so it's computer related, then you guys are able to see that we've got over here, for example, situation that in, let's say, IIS in application pools, connection strings are in a clear text and they were always there, but this one is interesting. Yes, we're gonna www.snow.com and there's a certain account. Okay, so what can we do to actually extract that password? Well, first of all, I'm gonna go to Windows, System32, inet srv, like this, and then we're gonna get into config and notepad application host config, and then we're gonna get into Freddy. Okay, and we got it. And that's this one here. Yeah, so we can see this actually encrypted. But it also says IIS, Windows Activation Service, Windows Process Activation Service actually, and only AS provider. Here we go. So that's symmetric, clearly. So if, and knowing the architecture of IIS, we know that Windows Process Activation Service runs on local system, and it actually does on one SVC host, though, with the World Web Publishing Service. Then we are able to be system, and as a system, we are able to ask service itself to give me the configuration. So here we go. Let's give it a try. That's gonna be fun. So one step up, and then we're gonna do app cmd, and then we're gonna do list app pool like this, and then we're gonna do snow.com/text, and then asterisk done. So by that kind of an export over here, yeah, we are able to actually at that stage to extract that clear text as well, username and password. So as you guys see, that is always a big challenge, and every single like password that we share, we share. I mean, we store. But I always say for storing, sharing, because at the end you kind of store. Yeah, so that is also something that is quite interesting to see here. Okay, so let's dig in what we've got, what else we've got. Yes, over here. So that's going to be about passwords. Now, of course, when we think about passwords for users, that's also important that we have things like keypass and so on, because every single password that we store within our session, then it is totally accessible if we gonna run some software as that user, and that leverages many attacks. There is a tool, for example, called Lazine, which is quite popular to be used within the attack, that allows us, based on data protection API, to extract passwords from VPNs, from things like Chrome, Firefox, and so on. And that is because we run it with the regular user privileges. So that is basically quite an easy setup there. Anyway, let's move forward. So what else we've got over here? Well, we've got things like peeping room, and I would like to actually combine it together with the USB stick up, because when we got these two things, that means that not only user did not, for example, log the desktop, but at the same time, what could potentially happen is that user could, for example, well, allow the USB ports aren't blocked, yes, so we are able to get access to the certain machine, and then we are able to eventually stick in the USB and do something, yes. So there are plenty of options over here, things like Rubber Ducky, things like DG Spark, where you are actually able to eventually start some software from the USB stick, so that it technically acts like a keyboard, and underneath you're gonna actually use PowerShell. So eventually you are able to process and perform the remote connection to some other resource. Yeah. But anyway, we're gonna be with it, because I would like to show you a scenario where we will be actually able to extract that information. So for now, just to mention, and in a moment we're gonna be getting further with the full scenario that is actually related with that. So what else? What else do we have? Now, we've got a fish biting, and fish biting in general, as phishing. So thinking like a hacker. So what should we do in order to prevent these situations, and what should we do to recognize the threat. And long story short, what we got over here, it's an example of phishing. So this is just a question to you. Is this a phishing email? And what do you guys think? So here we've got things like, well, that's an email. And that is actually an email that I have received some time ago when I dropped the car in Huntsville in Alabama. And just after I did that, just after that actually happened, what was the situation is that I was able to well, get an email, and my job was to analyze what's going on over here. So let me leave you guys for 30 seconds, literally, and within these 30 seconds, please try to evaluate what is wrong with this particular email. Yeah, so a little bit of a um, analysis, if you don't mind. So we've got 30 seconds to actually analyze what's going on over here. Okay, so I'm sure that if you are like super detailed, you can see that this P in please, it's smaller, yeah? Or you can see that there is like attachment, okay? I mean, it has a different icon. That's why because I use a different PDF reader. And we've got over here interesting size, yeah? So we've got over here PDF, which is 7 kilobytes. So that's technically not much, yeah? We've got, for example, font that's strange. So Roy Morrison space is missing over here, and there's also space missing in the address and in some other aspects over here as well. So that is quite a challenge, because eventually we are able to see that it doesn't really look bad. But at the same time, what I did later, I decided to not to open it, and my job over here was actually to analyze it later to see where that's going to take me. And at the end, what was fun is that that was actually the time where Adobe was vulnerable like every day. And at the end, as well, we could see that that was actually connecting to the hacker's computer using, for example, reverse shell. So that's also quite a challenge, yeah. Now, of course, there are plenty of solutions like this that could be sent to someone by email. And one of those that I would like to show you is actually this. Yeah, so for example, while performing that kind of phishing activity while I'm already logged on someone's account, it's even easier. Yeah, so you've got over here information. So that's like payroll, power cut, whatever file that I was sending. And then over here, you've got like a position, mean salary, and so on, and you could calculate your salary. The only problem with this is that this particular thing, as you can see, like whatever I move my mouse over here, whatever I kind of do, it just simply does not like the icon isn't like straight. This is just like a link, so it's a hand to click on it, right? So that was my point. So either well, like you can plug in the rubber ducky or DigiSpark to cause that, or you can send an email to cause that, but at the end the result is the same. So basically we've got over here a certain machine, so that's the hacker machine, and hacker is listening for the incoming connections, yeah. And eventually when I'm going to click on this one, what's going to happen, it's going to say like wrong number or whatever, yeah, or whatever. But eventually over here, maybe not, depends how it's going to work. Maybe that will simply connect, as you see, to that particular box, yeah. So here we go, so we've got a connection made already. And that is actually the time, the moment where we are able to do who am I, and then you can see that I'm Paula here, yeah. So funny part is that when we get into different commands, what we are also able to do, we're able at that stage, so whether it's coming from the USB or whether it's coming from this, it doesn't really matter. We are able to load a post exploitation library. That's the PS1. That is actually our Teams library that we always run after like we perform that kind of exploitation. And the next stage is that you don't need to be an admin to do it. So that's also pretty nice. So the next stage is going to be actually to do the screenshot. And that is something that I would like to show you, because eventually that is a really nice way of getting access to someone's computer. could be also to listen to the microphone, to take over the camera, and so on. So I have here various screenshots, yeah, already, but that's going to be actually my backup if I would need it. But over here, I can do copy, get screenshot, paste. Let's give it a try. Here we go. Yep. Yeah, screenshot taken. F5. Let's verify that. Not it's not saved yet. So it's for some reason. Okay, it took some time. Now we got it. Pink. Yeah, and that is basically the screenshot. Yeah. So we got it. Also, what else? And that's also quite an interesting perspective from the users from like finance, for example, department. One is their webcam snapshots. Okay, so that is easy to imagine, and that eventually it's quite challenging because I'm already accessing the camera, but we can go start key recording, for example, and I would like to show you as well. Paste, let's do it. For example, that when I'm going to be typing something, let's say notepad, I made a typo so you can see that too. Yeah, here we go. We can write test, and eventually that comes off over here. Yeah, so another perspective. Now, interesting one, it's related with the clipboard, and that is the one that I would like to share with you because eventually within the clipboard settings, you are able to replace clipboard so that it's going to be of a certain kind, so that whenever we're going to open something and so on, that will actually eventually show us something else here. So for example, please have a look. Yeah, over here, once again, let me just get the invoice. Yeah, done. So, yep, once again. Now we can see the black screen. Ah, okay, this is it. Great. So here we've got the account number, so we can copy that, Control C, and then in the notepad, here we go. I'm gonna paste it. Perfect. So then within the machine, when we're gonna be replacing the clipboard, once again, when I'm gonna get into the account number, and then I'm gonna switch to Notepad once again, bang bang. Then every single thing I am pasting right now, it is actually related with the what it has been replaced over here. Yeah. So eventually, these are the ways we can actually perform over here while performing these attacks. Okay, so we got it now. The next part to summarize is that all these attacks, as we can see, they happen fast and they're relatively hard to stop. So when 100 people in the company gets an email, 23 people will actually open it, and that is a phishing email, while 11 will open the attachment out of these, and 6 will do it within this first hour. And as we know, sometimes it's enough to have one person to actually do that. But also the statistics with the USB to compare were quite horrible, because we were saying that 90% of people who actually has a USB stick with the company logo printed on it will actually stick it in, and that is also a bit of a challenge over there, because there might be actually also a way to get access somewhere. Yeah. Well, anyway, so we can see that there are in general situations that are quite challenging, and at the end we've got different ways to get access to. Yeah, so we had USB stick, we had basically an email, but at the end we are still running a code. So we run PowerShell, we run, for example, so eventually macro. Yeah, so we run the executables or script files that are actually child processes of Excel, of Office. So that is something that when we configure exploit guard can be easily prevented. And also we have app blocker, device guard, and so on, to make sure that we are not running the code technically that we don't know. So long story short, that is the setup that we got. But let's get into the other options. So we've got a reckless abandon, where we leave a device, and that is a very simple thing to mention, that basically we should technically think how our device is protected, what can we do, to prevent that situation so that our data leaks, which of course for that we've got BitLocker. And what about the mobile device? So that's also something to mention here. Another aspect is the Wi-Fi. So when we remotely work from home, are we actually connecting safely to our business applications? And applications, of course, when we use our home Wi-Fi, for example, their traffic can be changed on the fly. So there are plenty of websites that allow you actually to do. This is illegal, obviously, but allow you to do free shopping. So you are able to change the price on the way while we buy something. Yeah, so it's easy also to find these apps. So they are public. One of those, actually, just to give you a glimpse, it's called Socks for Horses. So if you ride a horse and it's cold, then basically you can have socks. And that website can be easily used for that the price changes. Yes, but obviously this is illegal. Yes, so just a small aspect here, but everything over here through the VPN and so on to some certain safe source. And of course, at the end, a little bit too social, where we share too much information about ourselves. So things like, in general, Facebook stories and or the Messenger stories and so on. While, for example, we were doing the test about one of the company, and there was a guy, and he on the LinkedIn liked cars, and he was like liking Tesla cars and so on. And what we did analysis what kind of like forum this guy is on and so on. And eventually we found out some traces. And we found out that he had actually a mailbox on like some public servers. And the question to be asked to recover his password was his birthday, which was easy to guess from the internet, and also what's your favorite car? Well, then it's Tesla, right? And then basically we were able to get access to his mailbox. So that was actually quite fun. But at the end, that was just thanks to information that we are sharing over here. So just to mention. Okay, guys. So when it's about the quick summary with this short but I hope intense presentation, we had and a couple of aspects over here where we've got understanding, of course, that's the key to security. While at the same time, it's absolutely important to know the basic rules that whenever we share the password, we share it with someone else, and so on. And whenever there is something that runs on our account, then basically we are able to, if someone else runs the same software on our account, to extract the user's passwords. At the same time, we need to perform the regular penetration tests to make sure everything gets clear, because sometimes it's hard to spot something with our eye when we see this infrastructure every day. Sometimes it's just easier to have someone look from the external point of view. And at the end, basically, while we are working from home, it is also a big threat for us, because we might be more vulnerable to run the code that we don't know because we are bored. We would like to have more games and so on. So that is something that is a very easy access to someone's computer, and not really to basically even sometimes steal our data, but to encrypt it and then ask for money. So that is actually what we are dealing with right now today with our customer, because their data got encrypted through an interesting fact. There was a user that was working from home, and that user ran software on his computer that is not trusted. And because user was VPN to the organization, so technically having access to the resources from home, then basically the part of your data get encrypted on the server. So that was also quite an interesting story there, which also shows us how important is the security of the business workstation. But that is something that we know. Okay, guys, so summarizing, these are the resources that I follow if I would like to get more news about what's happening in cybersecurity. And if you would like to get tools that I used during this presentation, you can get into our secureacademy.com blog, and over there you are able to find pretty much all of these things. And the password for that you're going to also find in the description of our blog. It's actually Secure Academy #123 exclamation mark. But but that is something that you're gonna also see described in our blog. Every single time we share the tool, we actually give it a password. So CQ Secrets Dumper, for example, that I was using today, you will be able to find on our blog. So thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But at the end, I think we got it.
Thank you very much, Paula. It's very much appreciated. I learned a lot. Also, I learned that I'm doing so much stupid stuff on the internet that's not secure. So, on behalf of my mother, who's also online a lot, she doesn't know a lot of these security issues. Basically, she just goes online, goes on Facebook or Instagram, and she just posts whatever. So basically, my question is that how can we, on a very low level, inform the older people, or maybe even also the kids, like how to be safe on the internet? Of course, we can like ask. So, honestly, my mother, she writes down her passwords in a notebook, like pen, paper, writes it down. Asked her many times, put it in an application or an app like One Passport. She's like, it's too complicated. How can I help her and like small kids like to be more safe on the internet?
Absolutely. So that's always a big challenge, yes, because the moment you start explaining something, that it's getting usually too techy. So well, application is definitely a great suggestion here, yes, because everybody, even older people, they have access to various apps that they could use. But at the same time, they could, for example, have passwords that are stored in a KeePass, but access with the maybe YubiKey. That could be nice present. That's, for example, you could configure that every single time your mom comes to Facebook and so on, then it's just enough to have the pen drive sticked in, and then the password will fill up in the same way. So the experience is as the passwords were technically saved in the browser and so on, but they are really not, because they are served by the KeePass. So that's an option. And regarding the advice for like following a good practices, well, security in general or cybersecurity has its own context always. So, for example, if there's like a pen drive left somewhere, then basically that we know, because we are aware that could be potentially a threat. But there are like tens of things like this. So the question is always the same: am I expecting that to come to me? Because if I get a phishing email with the UPS package, or if I get a pen drive on the floor and so on, I'm not expecting this to happen. So in cybersecurity, it's very, for a certain to the certain point, it's easy to prevent things, because if I get software to run that is not digitally signed, am I supposed to run that? Yes. Or if I get like a pop-up with the software to run, I'm not supposed to run that. I'm not expecting this. So in general, that context, it's always related with a question: am I expecting this? And if it's not within my context that I am in right now, then simply don't run it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Well, phishing mail is for my mother. It's hard to detect. Like the mail you just showed, it's she probably would just like have believed everything. Here's my pin.
Yeah,
But
there you go.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things you mentioned that could help is like enable your two-factor authentication if an application has one, of course. So the hard part is that how to make like something how to make um, how to keep safe if you don't have the two-factor authentication possibility,
Mhm.
basically. So there are a lot of applications using two-factor authentication, but if they don't have it, like, are there any alternatives?
Well, of course, you could technically, well, if the application doesn't have it, then simply we just don't have it, right? So then two-factor authentication could be maintained a little bit externally by, for example, using the YubiKey that I was mentioning. So I'm not advertising it. That's basically a very nice, decent solution for guys like your mom, and for all of us, where you technically need to provide a password to the YubiKey so that you are, and you have a YubiKey itself, so that you are able to log on somewhere. Yeah, so that's this external multi-factor authentication that could be provided for the apps, for example.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula, for
Thank you.
your talk. I learned a lot, like a lot. So thank you everyone for watching this. And oh, I have one more question from Els. She asked. They ask, how do you feel about the password keeping services that many browsers provide these days?
Okay, so here's the thing. Depends, of course, on the implementation, but and I hope you can guys see my screen right now. Obviously, if we log in to like certain accounts, so maybe I could give it a little bit of a demonstration actually. Then basically we've got a possibility. So here we go, to extract passwords by using various tools. Don't forget, there are like two ways of doing it. One, it could be through data protection API relying on a user. And then that it's not a good idea to actually use it this way, because especially within the domain, let me get into actually CQ tools folder. When you've got a possibility to extract we call it a private key from the domain, then basically every domain user's password is going to be compromised if we're talking about the domain users. For the local users, you have to get the user's password eventually to be able to get these data. But over here, I've got Chrome Pass. And actually, I will show you something quick. So here within the Chrome Pass, which is not our tool, that's the nearest of tool, you are able to see, for example, passwords that are maintained in Chrome. But if, for example, browser implements password on the top of it, then there's going to be a tool where technically you need to provide a password on the top of it, and then technically that is potentially a good solution. Yeah, question is of course how strong that password is. Could we brute force it, or is this actually as well a data protection API? And it really depends on the implementation. So what I would like to show you, let me actually get there, is that we actually have a tool. And that it's a really nice, I think, answer for the question. So how does browser actually manage the password? We've got a tool which is called CQDP API Blob Searcher. And over here, we can specify, let's say, directory where your browser is installed in. So you can go to users, Freddy, that will be the user's profile. So update local Google, let's use Chrome for this, for whatever. Then we're going to do recursive search and the output to see a CQ tools folder, and let me stream the whole like tool output to DP TXT. So data protection, eventually API TXT. That takes, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe. And this tool, for example, we are using for forensics, and I'm using also during the attack to learn where users could store potentially the password so that I can steal it and then maybe use it for some other services. So maybe there is an admin who is keeping passwords somewhere. Then I would like to know basically what kind of passwords are those and so on. Maybe to some management portal, who knows. So let me show you. And here you are able to see that within the data protection API, here we go. There's a first output here. We've got 8 secrets that are managed in Google Chrome. Yeah, I'm not seeing these passwords yet because I can get into the process of decrypting them. But basically here there's a master key given. So it's like a key to encrypt secrets in Chrome. And every app has pretty much, not every app has its own, but most of the apps, they have their own, which is also stored within the user's profile, in a roaming profile. And we can see here that, for example, Google Chrome is using TripleDES and SHA-1 for the encryption. So what in summary, what this tool gives us, it's a possibility to list where the secret is stored. And when we say secret, we mean basically some password potentially. So here we go.
Thank you. Huge props on doing this all live and showing it directly to everyone. It's very impressive. Thank you again. Everyone, if you don't have any questions, I would like to thank you very much for your time. Please don't forget to follow our YouTube channel if you don't follow us just yet. And have a glass of wine, beer, or water, or whatever you like to drink, and congratulate yourself for spending your evening productively. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye.